Greetings, my magnificent ones. Sue Paulson here, your magnificence mentor. And we're back with another episode of Heaven on Earth. You probably know, if you've watched some of my other videos, that I really like to play with words. The significance of words, the meaning of words, the context of words. So today I want to talk about the word enough. The power of enough is what I've called this session. I probably heard lots from my mother when I was little, when my brother and I were acting out and going over the top, and she'd say, "That's enough." And we knew by the tone of her voice and the volume that it was time to stop whatever we were doing, because we had gone from okay to being over the top, and that was enough. So I'm very familiar with that word in that context. It's interesting to me how we have this contrast in our lives to help us decide, to help us choose the sweet spot, the place where we feel that all is well. Well, of course, lots of times, because we don't know at the outset how much of enough is enough, or how much is too much, or how much is not enough, then we play with that, right? We experiment a little bit, we try things on. And so, for example, I have a dear friend who loves shoes. Well, I look at her shoes in her closet and count the pairs, and I count the pairs in my closet, and I say, well, I have enough shoes. Well, she has probably 4 times more shoes than I do. And she said, well, can a woman ever have too many pairs of shoes? So for her, the multitude of pairs that she has isn't enough, because there's always another pair lurking around the corner somewhere. So it's just different for different people. When I think of the misery that we can get into in relation to the word enough, it's the misery of feeling not enough. We have plenty of evidence as we're growing that maybe the idea of the day or the concept of other people is that we're not enough, because they're always encouraging us to do better. Well, your math scores aren't high enough. You're not doing enough work. You're not enough. You haven't measured up. Well, that seeds a very debilitating condition, I think, in all of us, because we're always trying to play catch up. We're always trying to be, if not as good as, then better than someone else. And it isn't about growing into a skill or growing into a talent. It's more about competition, which seems counterproductive to me. I've never been much for the whole competitive thing, because the stress of it, for me personally, has been more than I was willing to deal with. So, and while a little pressure to get better at something, I think, is always valuable. Let's face it, when I first learned to tie my shoes, I was lousy at it, and I couldn't quite get the hang of how the knot worked, and then the bows came together and wrapping around the bow, and it seemed to take forever to get better at that. But because I wanted to master it, because it was important to me to have that skill and to be proud of having that skill, then I kept at it. I kept doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it, until I got to the point where I said, oh, I tied a bow. Now, did I tie a perfect bow every time? No. Did I care? Well, no, not really, because for me, the way I tied it in that moment was good enough. Oh, that's good enough. I won't trip on my shoelaces. It looks kind of like a bow. It's fine. So now I have people in my life who would say, no, 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 that's not a perfect bowl. Do it again. And because for them, that's not enough. That's not good enough. So we all have these kind of built-in standards, I think, that we come up with, either because those were the standards of loved ones who looked after us when we were growing up, or we saw a particular standard somewhere. But there's the challenge, right? Because when do the standards become the rule or the guiding light that unfortunately can create a tremendous amount of darkness for a lot of people? So as a female growing up, when I got to my teenage years, of course, the model Twiggy was in vogue, and she was stick thin. There wasn't much to her. Not only was she not very tall, size-wise, I would be surprised if she was even 5 feet tall. She probably didn't even weigh 100 pounds soaking wet. Well, and she had this waif-like expression on her face, and all of a sudden, all the photographers thought that this was the way to be. This was the model that women should aspire to. Well, of course, I looked at my frame, which was certainly larger than hers, and I stepped on the scale, and I knew that I weighed quite a bit more than she did. And there was this yearning, like, oh, could I ever look like that? Well, I was never going to look like that. I'm curvy. and I come from hearty stock that tend to be on the short and stocky side. So was I ever going to be like that? No. But unfortunately, with the media of the time, that kind of set the standard. Well, what was the standard before that? The standard before that was if you think of Marilyn Monroe and Rosalind Russell and the quotes beauty queens of the day, they were a size 14. They were curvy. They were voluptuous, and that was the standard of the day. And so there's been this big shift. Well, of course, we have this odd notion that somehow there's a perfect female form and a perfect male form and a perfect blah, blah, blah. It irritates me. It really irritates me because, first of all, each person has beauty in their own right. And why would we judge that? Why would we compare how they are and who they are to anyone else? Because they're unique. You're unique. I'm unique. There's no one like us on the planet. So why are we not celebrating our uniqueness and saying the way I am is enough? I'm enough the way I am. There's no, and in fact, even beyond the word enough, you're magnificent the way you are, and I'm magnificent the way I am. It's just different. It's not about living up to some standard. And of course, this is quite in my face these days, because as I get older, then things are shifting and changing, and so it's to adapt to that. But I still was concerned about how I looked when I was 15, when I was 20, when I was 30, when I was 40, when I was 50. So there's this whole culture that has weighed in and said, well, no, you can't be on TV if you don't look like this. Now, we've shifted somewhat, and I see programs now where looks like real people on TV to me now. They're not all made up and flawless and you know, exactly the ideal weight and all of that sort of thing. So some of that has shifted, but I think what has been left in the psyche of most of us is this idea of having to measure up in a variety of ways. Measure up with, do I have as much money as somebody else has? Do I have enough visibility? Do I have enough fame? Do I, all of those kinds of things that sabotage us, I think, when we say, well, because for me personally, there's lots of things that I say, I have enough. I don't need any more than what I have. What I have serves my needs, fits my purpose, and that's enough. I don't want any more to look after as far as things go. And yet I know people who have houses stuffed with stuff, and they're still buying. And I'm going, well, when is enough enough? But it seems as if it's filling a void that's there that says, oh, well, you know, I just have to have that. It creates kind of a hell on earth to me. So I think it's important for us to look at what's enough for us, and how do we see ourselves as being enough? Because the second that we can accept that things are just right with us, that's just enough to eat, that's just enough company, that's just enough food in the fridge, that's just enough possessions to help me live my life, that's just enough fun, that's just enough of everything, then there's an ease and a peace in that, where we're not feeling as if we're left out or without or whatever. I find that as I'm getting older, I'm satisfied with having less and less, because my needs aren't the same as they were when I was much younger. I just don't require as much. And although there's some things that, you know, I'm moving from low maintenance into more high maintenance these days. And so there's some things that I need more of than somebody else does, but that's okay. It's that shifting and changing and say, well, what is enough right now in this moment? What do I have enough of? So I'd like you to think about that this week, about how much is enough versus how much is too much or how much is not enough. So if you're not expending enough effort to achieve what you want, well, then maybe you need to expend a little more effort until it is enough. If you've done a job and it suits your purposes, and even though it wasn't the most perfect job in the whole world, but it was just right for what you needed, well, then it's enough. It's good enough. And then time to move on to the next thing. So it's an interesting process that you can go through as you look at that. And you might want to investigate as part of that, well, where did all these messages come from? And if they're not messages that I want to carry forward, then what am I going to do to shift and change that, to accept a different reality for myself than the one that was maybe put upon me when I was growing up? Because that's where you can kind of root out those little pockets of hell that lurk in the background somewhere, and then begin to say, well, I'm in charge. I'm the co-creator of my universe. So it's important that I have things that are just enough for me, knowing that always I am enough, no matter what's going on in front of me, and whether or not I feel I'm measuring up. I am enough. I'm magnificent enough to be enough. You know you can do this because you are that magnificent. Now, one final thought before I go. If you're enjoying Heaven on Earth as a series, please subscribe to the channel. You can also get access all my Tea with Sue videos and my Magnificence moments. There's some on my other YouTube channel as well, some of the playlists that I have there. You can also download the Magnificence Mentor, my free app that will open up all the content that I've been putting out for the last few years to help you and inspire you to really embrace and unlock your own magnificence. And if you're a change maker, you like the conversation and the exploration of peers who want to come together and explore how we're all making a difference in the world, you could join Chris Angel and I on the Magnificence Lab. So it's simply to click on our magnificencelab.org/invite. You'll see a little video that talks about the community and talks about how to get involved. That's all I have for you for today. It's the end of June. We're looking forward to a big happy Canada Day tomorrow. So it's Canada's birthday. I forget how many years, 170 something or other. Well, happy birthday, Canada, and happy birthday to my fellow Canadians. And of course, July 4th is coming up in the States shortly as well. So have cake, celebrate, have fun. Until next time.